there. Welcome to the Make It Visible podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Kuei. I am a visibility and marketing coach, and this is our special spot for female coaches who might be feeling a little bit lost in the crowd, especially if you're introverted. We're here to help you to stand out, so join us as we share stories, tips, and fun chat that will help you shine. Whether you are new or perhaps you've been coaching for a while, this is going to be your go-to place to be seen and heard. So get comfy and grab your coffee. Let's get started. You're going to be hearing my sexy voice in this episode. Over the weekend, I just came back from a conference, mastermind conference. This is with my mentor. And it's a big marketing conference. And so there's a lot of different coaches and entrepreneurs who gather together. And every year we have this event that we all go to and exchange and also network with new ideas and trends and things to look out for in the upcoming year. I just came back from Texas, Dallas. And so it was actually a very energetic, high energy. You know how you go to a Tony Robbins event and it's all like really high energy vibes. And by the time you get home, it's like your body is just coming off from that roller coaster, right? That roller coaster of emotional, oh my gosh, this is so profound. This is so different. There's my aha moment. And then I came back. I came down with this cold. And usually when my immune system is down and I get canker sore. Today, I want to talk about the 3 tips, how to create content and get clients, even if you don't have a niche. And I share this on multiple occasions and different podcasts is that I think coaches are so drawn to the idea of I need to find a niche. So they spend a lot of time finding that niche. And so the longer you wait, the longer it takes for you to find that niche, the longer it is for you to have an idea of, okay, so what do I want to talk about when I go on live? What do I post that would actually get people to think about me as the expert? And so there's a lot of first step for coaches, which I don't believe they're true. Like your first step to start a coaching business is not to sit down and making it so hard on yourself to having to find a niche. Your first step is really to get out there and test the water. And this is where a lot of time you'll hear people in the marketing world said that a lot of what marketing does is about testing, right? We don't know something that we put out into the world is going to go viral. How do you know that? The only way that you're going to know is that you actually create something and you put it out into the world and test it. Now, of course, there's a difference between just throwing spaghetti on the wall versus actually strategically throwing spaghetti and knowing that something will stick. And so instead of finding yourself, beating yourself up because you don't have a niche, my whole approach is that I believe that what you need to do in the first place is to start learning how to create content that your audience, your followers, the people that you are going to serve is going to resonate. Now, you may say, Michelle, that's great, but don't you still need to have a niche? Yes, you absolutely do need to have a niche if you want to like really stand out and stand apart and being seen as the expert in one area. But if you think about the process, this is where the chicken and the egg first, or the egg and the chicken first, right? So in order to be seen as an expert, it's about giving the audience something, an idea, a perception of the things that you talk about. Now, in order to be positioned as an expert, you need to start giving people something to talk about. And if you keep looking for that niche, like I said, the longer that you wait, the longer you keep yourself holding yourself back because I don't have a niche, the longer it's going to take for your audience to have that perception of where to position you as the expert. And so one of the things I teach in my course, in my program, is that I don't want my students to beating themselves up for having a vague or not having the niche statement dialed in, right? It could be as general as I'm going to help a woman who feel maybe a divorced woman. Let's use that for example. I'm going to help a divorced woman to feel that they can live their dream life feeling fulfilled, joy, and compassion. It could be just that. And when you throw it out there to test it out, people who have gone through the divorce, or perhaps people who are in a stage of getting that divorce, they're going to come forward and identify. They're going to self-identify, right? Self-identify, and that will allow them to say, I don't really want to have the fulfillment. Oh, no, I don't really want to have the compassion. So the idea of having that statement is for you to start having conversation. And no matter how you come up with it, it's going to shift, it's going to change. Why? Because the more that you're in the market, the more information that you're going to receive, the feedback you're going to have from your audience telling you that, hey, that word is not sticking with me, or that doesn't sound really what I'm looking for. You're going to start getting those information. So until you get those information, you're going to find yourself keep circling around. Oh, I need to nail that statement. I need to nail that statement. And honestly, and this is something I chuckle and laugh all the time. I see people posting, oh, I need to do market research. Half of the time, I don't know about you, but like half of the time, every time I put out something into the world and I say, oh, I need to do this on market research, I hear cricket. No one wants to jump on, or even if they do jump on, they're another coach or they're going through the same process. So they're jumping on just to help you out. And that's not your true audience. So how do you create content and get clients even if you don't have a niche? I'm going to give you 3 tips on that. I know that's such a long intro, but I got so really fed up in the fact that a lot of us, we gone through that process and we found our niche. Your first step is not finding the niche. The first step was for you to get out there and start to testing it out. And the way that you test it out is you come up with these different topics when you create content, and something is going to resonate. Something is going to stick. So instead of having you go out there, that's not what I'm here for. I don't want you to go out and just throw spaghettis. I want you to go out there and start throwing strategic spaghetti so that something will stick and you'll know exactly which one is stick, so that you can come back to the drawing board and refine your statement. And I'm talking about refinement. I'm not talking about I need to have this dialed in 100% and otherwise I'm not going to be successful. You're going to get successful the minute that you start doing some testing, the minute that you start getting some audience feedback. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for feedbacks, right? All right. So how do you create content even when you don't have a niche? So here's where I started. When I first started my coaching business, I had no idea who I want to help. I call myself a transition coach initially. And the word transition, for me, it triggers some connotation, right? Transition. What do you mean transition? Like, am I going from transgender, transition? What does that mean? And so I had to refine it to life transition coach. And then it was leadership transition coach. And then it changed over time because each time I put out information out there, people just have a lot more questions, right? They have a lot more questions. Oh, transition coach, tell me more about that. And this is a bonus tip for you. When you start hearing people asking you to explain something, then you know the way that you said it, it's not sticking, it's not refined, it's not resonating. Okay. So anytime you go out there and you're talking to people and they're like, oh, what does that mean? Oh, higher potential, what does that mean? Or if you graduated from IPAC like I did, we talked about energy leadership. So if you find yourself constantly having to explain what energy leadership is, then you're doing it wrong, right? Because people should not have to tell you to explain it and they would just get it. And the way that they get it is you use the terminology or words that just simply every day your third grade people would understand. So you have to approach all your content from the perspective of, I don't know you. I don't know what you do. I don't know how you do it. But yet the way that you said it, even I can understand as a third grade person. That would be a successful written copies, or the way that you describe things, that would be a success for you. Okay. So that's a bonus tip. You wanted to explain things without further explain, like when you said it and people just get it. You can use analogy to describe things that you want to describe. You can use some stories to explain what you need to explain. And those are common things that people will resonate. They understand analogy, they understand stories. So these are the easy things to explain something without actually explaining what it is. All right. So tip number 1 If you're looking to create content, but you don't have a niche or you're not quite sure, maybe you have a niche, but you're still looking at a blank canvas and you're thinking, where's my words? It's not coming through. What do I write about? And how do I start even? So tip number one is you want to start with values. And this is where I started when I first got into coaching. I had no idea what was my niche and what was the content I want to create. So I picked my top three values. And those top three values are, we all done this value assessment, value exercise, right? So we all know that there are some of our non-negotiable values. And a lot of us end up picking 5 or 10. But if you really look at your whole list of values, you can probably narrow it down to top 3. So like your exercise after the episode today, I want you to actually sit down and think about your values. What are those top 3 values that you have that you would like to carry it into your business? Like, how do you want your business to look, feel, and sound like for the rest of the audience? So let me give you an example. So when I first start, my top 3 values are ABC, and I talk about this on multiple podcasts, and it became my signature talk because all I talk about are my ABC. So what is A is authenticity. So what I want myself and my business to look like something that's authentic. I don't have a whole lot of like fluffy stuff. And when I go on live, I just go on live. I don't put on makeups. I don't like special dress up or have anything. I want it to be real. I want it to be like I'm sitting next to you and in a coffee shop and we're just having a heart-to-heart conversation. And when I meet you in the coffee shop, I may be looking at my worst moment. Like right now, my sexy boys and my kinkosaurs on the side. This is how I am going to look. I'm not going to like, oh, I think so and so is going to be at a coffee shop. Let me put on makeup and so that I can run into her and maybe she like my look and she'll become my client. That's not how I want to approach my business. So authenticity was a huge one. And B would be bravery or courage, right? Those of you who follow my stories, the signature story that I share is how I use my 2 crutches and I hiked 26 miles of Inca Trail to Machu Picchu. And that was a story of courage and how I discovered my authenticity, my bravery, and knowing that I don't have to do things alone, which brings me to the third value, which is connection or community. And when I first started out creating content, I focused on those 3 category or 3 values, and they become my brand values. This is what my brand stands for: authenticity, bravery, and connection, which still up until this day, I still talk about these ABC. And so your tip number 1, if you don't have a niche, or even if you do have a niche and you're struggling to know exactly what to talk about and how to create content, I want you to sit down and think about what are your brand value? What are your values that you bring into your business? And those would be great categories or pillars. Sometimes you'll hear marketing people call it the content pillar, right? The content pillar, basically it's ideas or things that you want to focus and creating content around that will lead people to either book a call with you or having some type of call to action, right? It could be booking a call. It could be signing up my newsletter. It could be download my lead magnet. It could be just sign up to my program. So your content pillar essentially allows you to anchor your thoughts, your idea, so that you can create contents around focusing around those topics that doesn't take your audience like to all over the place. So your tip number 1 for you is to sit down and think about what are your top 3 values that you can create content around when you don't have a niche. And even if you do have a niche, this is a great place to start as well. So occasionally I would throw in like visibility, marketing, but everything that I represent in my business, it doesn't go too far away or it doesn't go away from my values. So that's tip number 1. If you don't have a niche, or even if you do have a niche, but you find yourself wondering, like, how do I create content? Starting with your value, that would be a great place to begin. All right. Tip number 2 is to define the outcome. One struggles that I see a lot of coaches are having is, okay, great. I'm going to talk about bravery. I'm going to talk about courage. And then they start writing this whole entire long beautiful, tedious, and really hard to read posts and they post it on social media. And by the time I get to half of it, I don't even need to get to half of it. I have completely lost interest of wanting to finish it, right? Despite the fact that towards the end, it's usually very beautiful, a very inspirational type of post. But you lost your audience halfway because it's just so long, so tedious. I have no idea what this is about and why should I even care. So tip number 2 for you when you create content and if you want to get clients is that you want to make sure that you have an outcome that you're taking your audience going to. And what are those outcomes? So there's 2 big outcomes that you want to focus on. Number 1 is what is the emotional outcome that you want someone to finish reading and what should they feel? Like when I read a post, what do you want me to feel? Inspired? Do I want to feel like sad? Do I want to feel empathy? What is that emotion that you want me to walk away with? And that would be important because why? When you want to create content that would actually convert your audience to a buyer, there's emotional buy-in, right? When we purchase something, when we sign up on something, usually there's an emotional buy-in to the fact or to whatever that you're creating and the content that you're sharing. So if you are completely lost and you don't have a niche and you're not sure what would get people to sign up with you, focus on the emotional outcome that you would like that person to have after they read your post. And so what you want to think about before you create anything is that, well, what do I want people to feel after reading this? Should I want them to feel courageous, fearless? What is it? So you want to define that outcome that would allow you to guide you through on creating that post. And that's also going to help you to decide what story would be important to incorporate that will enhance this whole emotional journey that my audience wants to have. So that's how you decide which story piece to bring into a post, a social media post or a blog post. That's how you decide which story to tell because not every story has a emotional outcome. Some are just a story. Like I got up this morning, I had a cup of coffee, and then I sat down in front of the desk and I started working. There's no emotional outcome from that story. But if I were to tell you that this morning I woke up, I was so inspired and I was so motivated because I know that there's nothing can stop me. So I went to the kitchen and grabbed my coffee and then came to the desk and I'm going to create this podcast episode for you all who don't have an issue or struggling with content creation. So that's what I'm going to do. And so there's an emotional outcome of being inspired, being motivated. I can do this when you share that story. So the emotion and the outcome would be very different. And that will give your audience a different feel when they start reading your posts and when they start reading your content. So tip number 2, again, is to define that outcome. What is that outcome that you want people to have? Is it something that's actionable? Can I do this? So this also happened. I was just on Facebook earlier and I saw this long post and I'm thinking halfway through, what is it I need to do in this post? Like, what is it I need to do in here? So when you have people who are reading your post and they get confused, like exactly what do you want me to do, then they'll just go away and not do anything. So you want to make sure that whatever that you're writing, whatever that you're sharing is something that's actionable. Just one tip or one action. What do you want me to do? Just like this post. That's one action. So you want to make sure that you make your post actionable so that you would actually get the response that you wanted. You want more? Great. Just tell them, hey, just like my post. If you want them to share it and just tell them, hey, I'll share my post to someone who needs to hear this. And so that's how you invite your audience to take some action. And even with booking a call, don't give them multiple links and which link do you want me to go to? So those are the common mistakes I see a lot of coaches are making. Even when you have a niche, it's going to enhance your overall for your audience so that they have a clear picture of exactly what do I need to do. Don't give them multiple action. They just won't take it. Okay, so tip number 3 So just recap a little bit. We talked about tip number one, how to create content and get clients even if you don't have a niche. Tip number one is to start with your value. What are your top 3 values? Those would be great content pillars that you can focus on, because no matter where you go, you never go away with your personal values, right? So those would be great plays to start creating content around, and that will also allow you to be positioned as an expert. And even later on, when you do have a niche, you can still spin it to make sure that it is aligned with where you are now. So start with your value. Our value typically are non-negotiable, right? I have non-negotiable values no matter whether it's in my life or in my business, and I'm going to carry that no matter what my niche is. So start with your value. And tip number 2 is to have an identify or define an outcome for your audience. Is it emotional outcome, or is it something that's actionable outcome? What is it that you want people to do at the end of that post? Tip number 3 is silent is a goal. So you wanted to make sure that when you're posting on social media, you keep the post short and legible. And this is I see a common mistake that when people think about storytelling, oh, my storytelling, I need to tell my whole journey, and there's no space to in between to breathe. Like when I talk in fragment, and that's probably a unforeseeable benefit for being English as my second language, because I speak in broken fragments. A lot of time I don't finish the whole sentence, and you don't hear me finishing the whole sentence. I talk in fragments, and there's a lot of like breaks, right? So when you write a post, or especially on social media, a blog post, that's a different story, right? Blog post, you want to look and feel and sound slightly more sophisticated, more professional. So in a blog post, you would go back and edit out these fragmented sentences to make it looking more professional. But a social media post is where it allows you to connect and meet your audience where they are. And so it's a little more personal. So when you have a personal connection, you want to make it short, legible, and conversational. And most of the time, you don't need to be 100% grammatically correct, right? And so in the past, a lot of people with a lot of grammar police, they would come out and jump in and say, oh, Michelle, you have a typo there. Oh, Michelle, that's grammatically incorrect. And so the argument is that you want to be professional, or do you want to be conversational? And to me, it's always about making that personal connection, right? When you're on my social media, I want to make friends with you, and I want to get to know you, so we know, are we a good fit? Even if you decided to sign up with me or not sign up with me. So that personal connection, I think it's very valuable, and it's very needed, especially in nowadays with all the, what do you call that? The artificial intelligence, the AI, like taking over the world. Everybody can sound professional. When you get to know me, you get to know me on a personal level. And so my sentences are very short, fragmented, but what it also does is allow people to take a deep breath and just rest. So when I'm reading a shorter post, I have room to breathe. I have room to think about, what does that mean to me? And when you share a long freaking story with no line break, with no emoji, I'm a huge fan of emoji, no emoji, it makes it really hard to read. And our attention span is so short that I don't necessarily want to spend 10 minutes just to read through the post, just to get to the bottom of what exactly does it mean for me. I want to be able to read and digest and know what it means to me, and whether or not I want to take the action. So tip number 3, when you don't have a niche and you want to create content, is that you want to make sure that your sentences are not run-on. This is a technical term for, if you're an English teacher, you'll probably get this. You don't want to have run-on sentences where it's like a whole entire paragraph. So you want to keep it short, and making sure that the general rule is that each line should be just 1 to 2 sentences. That's it. 1, even 2 sentences, sometimes depending on how long you structure a sentence, it might be too long. So each line should just be 1 sentence. So how do you tell a story within that 1 sentence? I got up, coffee was great. That's a story. So keep it short and condensed so that it's easier to read and digest. And don't start ranting, okay? The story is not meant to rant. Stories are meant to give people a lesson, teach them a lesson, show them the value, and show them the way. It's not about ranting. And after if you read some of the posts that's on social media, it's, oh my gosh, face slap. Oh my gosh, what were you thinking? So don't rant. Okay, keep it short, keep it conversational, and remember, silence is gold. And the way that we show those silence is when you have line space or line breaks. Okay, that's how that would allow people to think about what they have just read so that they can digest, they can internalize, they can think about what does it all mean to me. All right, I went over a couple of things, but the bottom line is you don't need to have a niche in order to start creating content. And I know it sounds very scary, Michelle, but what if there's a lot of what if, right, in our everyday life, not just in coaching business. There's a lot of, but if you really think about just making that connection and sharing and creating that ripple effect that you want to share and spread to the world, all you need are just these 3 things, right? So tip number 1 is to start with your value. What are your value? And can you create content around those value? What lesson have you learned to be authentic? What does authenticity means? And how can you be more authentic? And bravery would be like what makes you feel courageous, right? Those are the examples that I have used in the past when I started my life and mindset coaching business. That's how I started. I didn't start with I'm going to teach you about marketing. I'm going to teach you about visibility. I'm going to teach you about how to position yourself as an expert. I started with just telling these values, stories I have learned on my journey, stories that I have tried and failed, but then I found out this, right? So it all centered around values. So what are your values? Think about that. Tip number 2 is to define an outcome. What is the outcome? What is the emotional outcome that you would like to have your audience to walk away with? And are they actionable? Are they digestible? Which is tip number 3, right? Stop ranting. Stop creating these long, tedious posts. People don't have time to read it. So keep it short. Have incorporated some mind breaks, white space in there, because your silence is gold. You got to give people the room to breathe and think about what does it all mean to them. So those are the 3 tips I have for you in terms of how to create content and get clients, even if you don't have a niche. The number 1 thing I will leave you with is that you can spend day in, day out trying to refine your niche and trying to nail it. But the longer that you wait to create these content, to get out in front of your audience, to get out and start establishing your audience, curating that followers, right? Nobody would know that you have a coaching business. And that, to me, is just sad. And people spend thousands and thousands of dollars working with business coaches, and all they do is, I got this business ready, I got my website, I got this ready, I got my copy written, but then like after a while they just disappear from the planet because they don't know how to create content, and they don't know what type of content would actually resonate to help them to get clients. So my whole approach is that I want you to stop thinking about all these aesthetic things like your website. Just put something together and just throw it out there and start testing it. And you're just going to have to get up and start doing it in order to get clients. There's that whole supply and demand idea, right? Which is another idea for another episode. But the whole point is that there has to be a demand in order to have the market. So if you don't have the demand, there is no market. So even if you start just talking to people and you're building that relationship, that, my friend, itself is going to generate your business. And that's what keeps your business sustainable and successful, because you need the market. And in order to have that market, people need to know that you actually exist. If they don't know that you exist, you don't have a business. All right. If you like this episode, be sure to share with your fellow coaches so that they can benefit, because I don't want anybody being stuck in content creation. Have fun, ladies. Thank you for listening to Make It Visible podcast. If you love this episode and want deeper support for your coaching business, head over to elevatelifecoaching.org and see how we can partner together to turn your passion into a profitable business. I help female coaches launch and scale their coaching business faster than ever without wasted time and money, filling the gaps in your marketing strategies, creating a simple and easy to follow system so you can accelerate on the path of coaching business that you love to wake up to. Head over to elevatelifecoaching.org and grab a free strategy audit today.